In the last video, we discussed how game levels are created from paper prototypes to gray cubes and then to the white box, a more refined version of the level. We also covered the three types of levels and their differences: linear, cluster, and hub. Additionally, we talked about game documentation. Today, we will discuss the functionality and testing of levels, as well as some techniques used by level designers in creating levels. It's Karina and we begin. Next comes the creation of playable prototype. This is the very gray box. Thanks to the gray box, the level designer can see the location for the first time with their own eyes. Colorless and undetailed geometric shapes allow for quickly modifying the level structure, removing and adding large chunks of location, and even wiping everything clean and starting anew. Sometimes, at this stage, not all gameplay mechanics are ready for use, so the designer has gradually implemented them to adapt the level to changing development conditions. At this stage, level designers rely on established metrics. They make it easier to maintain proportions and scale of the level, as well as ensure that the character can climb onto all necessary ledges and avoid hitting their head on low ceilings. And by the way, several dozen metrics may be required for just one simple room blockout. Not adhering the metrics can spoil the player's enjoyment of the game, especially when the protagonist's head unexpectedly protrudes from behind cover during a shotgun. After the level designer has determined the level sizes and established the correct scale, the next step is to make it playable as quickly as possible. This involves configuring all the necessary functionality, such as character spawn points, triggers for script events, and the environment for artificial intelligence. Next comes gameplay testing. During gaming sessions, the designer watches the tester and collects feedback to identify the most irritating factors. New iterations of the level are tested until critical issues are eliminated. At this stage, the game engine is already sufficiently stable. For example, the camera operation can be calculated. This is especially important in third-person games. Level designers ensure that the walls and small objects do not obstruct the player's view, and the camera itself does not collide with the location boundaries or walls, or conversely, to have the camera fully collide, causing the players to feel claustrophobic. For example, in Dark Souls, narrow tunnels and catacombs are regularly encountered. They press down on the player. Moreover, the less empty space around the character, it's more difficult to maneuver, and in such places, the camera becomes yet another invisible element of level design. The limitations of game engine are also important for the level designer. Sometimes the imagination of location creator exceeds the capabilities of technologists that outline this location, and in such moments, level designer together with programmers seek to be smarter. This often happens in the development of war games due to the limited power of this device. But we'll talk about this another time. The most well-known trick is to use occlusion culling. Players encounter such level elements regularly, and if occlusion culling is done well, players hardly notice them. Elevators in Mass Effect, narrow alleys in The Last of Us, the tight vines in The Rise of the Tomb Raider. All these places are necessary to notice the player's progression because the engine also needs time to unload old elements from the scene and load new ones. Moreover, occlusion culling is the elimination of everything that camera no longer sees. It works even faster in such spaces. Developers and programmers use scripts to cut off the entire chunks of the location that the player has already passed. The most interesting example is probably Uncharted 2 Among Thieves and the level with the train, because when the player opens a huge massive iron door, the camera angle changes. At that moment, the entire background of the location is swapped out. This is considered an occlusion culling technique. As a result of the stage of development, a blueprint is created. Once it's approved, the layout, the development of the location stops, except for the special cases. And from this moment on, the prototype is no longer changed, only polished. The next stage is the creation of white box. When the initial blockout has served its purpose, level designers move on creating a geometry prototype. Environmental artists and concept artists join to work on the level. At this stage, more depends on them than on the level designer themselves. Now that the location layout has been approved, it's time for visual refinement. A white box is assembled from temporary models based on gameplay prototype. The environmental artist must strive not only to maintain the integrity of gameplay prototype, but also to use any artistic means to enhance navigation for the level. Lighting, composition, contrast, and so on. An interesting example of differences between all types of blackout can be seen in Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. The chase scenes from the episode hidden in the plain sight vividly demonstrates the difference between the stages of level development, from the gameplay prototype assembled by level designers to the geometry prototype of the location drawn by the artist, and finally to the final version of the level. Sometimes, after environment detailing, the location ceases to be playable. For example, a bedside table might block the way, or a temporary rough tree model might obstruct the level exit and disorient the player. In such cases, the level goes back in the hands of level designer. Now, they need to urgently recheck if the mechanics are working correctly, if the player can navigate everywhere, and if they can see everything they need to. This is where metrics come in handy again. So after white box confirms that everything is working as intended, the level designer will have almost a finished level in his hands, assembled from temporary models and textures. In the next video, we're gonna discuss the last stages of level development, the first games and rules that were stabilized throughout the time. We will also talk about the problems that level designers face and what decisions they made. It was Karina with you. May you all enjoy your lovely day and achieve great things in your work. Bye!